There are places we should not return to, not because they are far away, not because they have disappeared, not because they no longer physically exist, but because a part of us was left broken there. There are places that may seem like simple spaces, simple people, simple memories, unfinished conversations, but in reality, they are the scenes where we left too many tears, too much faith, too much patience, too much life. Places where we once went with an open heart and left with a trembling soul. Places where we believed we had found love, refuge, company, or belonging, and instead we found pain, abandonment, humiliation, or silence. And even if time passes, even if circumstances change, even if that person returns, even if the memory becomes softer, even if nostalgia tries to lie to you, there is one truth you need to remember. Do not return to places where your soul was broken. Do not return just because you miss them. Do not return just because you feel lonely. Do not return just because they promised you that this time things will be different. Do not return just because a part of you still wishes everything had turned out another way. Do not return just because the heart sometimes confuses habit with destiny. Do not knock again on the door where they left you waiting so many times, because there are pains that were not accidents. There are wounds that did not happen only once. There are disappointments that were not misunderstandings, but patterns. There are absences that were not coincidences, but choices. There is coldness that was not confusion, but lack of care. And even if it hurts to accept it, not every place you miss deserves your return. Sometimes you miss it not because you should go back, but because a part of you has not yet fully accepted that what you loved was also what destroyed you. And that is hard, very hard. Because when someone or something broke us, we do not always remember only the pain. Sometimes we also remember the beautiful parts. We remember the beginning, the laughter, the promises, the hugs, the messages, the moments when everything seemed to make sense. We remember the version of that person that made us feel special. We remember the days when we believed we had finally found a safe place. And then memory becomes dangerous, because it selects the sweet pieces of a story that also had thorns. It shows you what made you fall in love, but tries to hide what broke you. That is why you must be careful with nostalgia. Nostalgia can paint in gold the places where you cried in silence, can make you believe it was not that serious, can soften the words that hurt you. It can disguise a constant lack of love, respect, or reciprocity as difficult moments. It can make you think that maybe you exaggerated, that maybe you should have waited longer, that maybe now they really have changed, that maybe this time it will hurt less. But there is something you must ask yourself honestly. If you go back, are you going back because reality is different? Or because you have not been able to let go of the hope that it will be? Because returning to a place that has healed is not the same as returning to a place that only learned to call you when it is losing you. Going back to a relationship where there was responsibility, change, and true repair is not the same as returning to a story where only the words changed, but not the actions. Giving another chance from a place of peace is not the same as going back from anxiety, fear, or loneliness. And many times we do not go back because we trust. We go back because we miss. We go back because being away hurts. We go back because the emptiness feels heavy. We go back because a part of us still wants to receive the apology that never came, the love that was never enough, the explanation we were never given, the version of that person they promised to become but never sustained. We go back looking for closure and only find another cycle. We go back hoping that this time they will care for us. We go back hoping that this time they will choose us. We go back hoping that this time they will listen to us. We go back hoping that this time they will not make us feel small. We go back hoping that this time we will not have to beg for the basics. But if in order to feel loved you have to explain again to someone how not to break you, maybe that place is not home. If in order to receive respect you have to negotiate your dignity, maybe that place is not destiny. If in order to stay there you have to make yourself smaller, stay silent, endure, justify, forgive without change, and pretend it no longer hurts, maybe that place does not deserve another chance. Do not confuse the desire to return with a sign that you should. Sometimes the heart wants to return to what is familiar, even when what is familiar was painful, because the unknown is frightening. Healing is frightening. Being alone is frightening. Starting over is frightening. Building a life without that person, without that place, without that version of yourself, is frightening. And so the mind tries to convince you that maybe it was better to stay where it hurt, because at least you knew how to survive there. But surviving is not living. And you were not born to survive in places where your soul has to hide in order not to be hurt again. You were not born to return endlessly to the same scenes, the same arguments, the same tears, the same empty promises. You were not born to call love what leaves you without peace. You were not born to stay where your heart has to harden in order to endure. There are places that were only lessons, not destinations. There are people who were only chapters, not homes. There are stories that came to wake you up, not to stay with you forever. There are wounds that did not come to destroy you, but to show you what you must never allow again. But to learn from a wound, you have to stop reopening it. You cannot heal in the same place where they keep hurting you. You cannot rebuild yourself in a space where you are constantly reminded that your pain does not matter. You cannot recover your peace beside someone who became used to taking it away. You cannot bloom again where they made you feel that your light was a bother. And maybe someone will tell you that you should forgive. Maybe you tell yourself the same thing. And yes, forgiveness can be part of healing. But forgiveness does not always mean returning. Forgiveness does not mean opening the door again. Forgiveness does not mean giving access to your life to someone who did not know how to care for your heart. Forgiveness does not mean pretending that nothing happened. Forgiveness does not mean erasing the consequences. You can forgive and not return. You can release resentment and still keep your distance. You can wish someone well and still choose your peace. You can understand their wounds and still protect your own. You can accept an apology and still not give your trust again. Because forgiveness should not become an excuse to allow yourself to be broken again. There are people who confuse your kindness with permission. They confuse your patience with eternal availability. They confuse your love with a lack of boundaries. They confuse your ability to forgive with a guarantee that you will always come back. And one day you have to teach them, not with shouting, not with revenge, not with hatred, but with your absence, that your heart is not a place where someone can enter and leave without responsibility. Your peace also needs protection. Sometimes leaving will be the most painful act, but also the most loving one you can do for yourself. Because staying where your soul was broken may look like loyalty, but many times it is self-abandonment. It may look like hope, but many times it is fear. It may look like love, but many times it is dependence disguised as patience. It takes a lot of courage to accept that something you loved was not good for you. It takes a lot of courage to look at a beautiful memory and say, yes, it was beautiful, but it also hurt too much. It takes courage to admit that not everything that feels intense is healthy, that not everything you miss deserves to return, that not everything you desire is good for you, that not every open door should be crossed, that not every person who comes back returns with love. Sometimes they return with habit, ego, need, or fear of being left without the person who always waited for them. And you must no longer be the safe place for those who turned you into a battlefield. You do not have to be available for someone who only looked for you when they felt lonely. You do not have to answer someone who ignored your pain when you most needed understanding. You do not have to go back to someone who only valued you when they felt they were losing you. You do not have to explain again to an adult that love is also shown through respect, presence, care, and emotional responsibility. Sometimes closure is not a conversation. Sometimes closure is not going back. Sometimes closure is no longer insisting. Sometimes closure is deleting the message you wanted to send. Sometimes closure is accepting that the answer was already in the actions. Sometimes closure is understanding that if it hurt so many times, it was not a coincidence. Because repeated behavior is also an answer. Repeated absence is also an answer. An apology without change is also an answer. A broken promise is also an answer. Lack of care is also an answer. And even if it is not the answer you wanted, it may be the answer you need in order to save yourself. Do not return to places where your soul was broken just because there is still love. Love is not always enough reason to stay. Love does not always make a place healthy. You can love someone deeply and still recognize that they do not know how to love you well. You can miss a chapter and still accept that returning would be a betrayal of yourself. You can cry for what was and still choose not to return to what destroyed you. Because loving someone should not cost you losing yourself. And if you lost yourself in that place, if you stopped recognizing yourself, if you began silencing what you felt, if you learned to apologize for needing respect, if you got used to receiving crumbs, if you cried more than you smiled, If you lived waiting for small signs so you would not leave, then you have to ask yourself, do I want to go back because of love or because of habit? Do I want to go back because that place has changed, or because I still do not know how to live without it? Do I want to go back because it is good for me, or because I have not learned to choose myself? Sometimes you do not miss a person. You miss how you felt before they broke you. You miss who you were when you believed. You miss the illusion. You miss the future you imagined. You miss the version of yourself that did not yet know how much it would hurt. But you cannot return to the past because you are no longer the same person. You have already seen. You have already understood. You have already cried. You have already broken. You have already survived. And after surviving, you cannot return to the place that almost extinguished you as if you did not know what happened. Your soul remembers, even if your mind tries to justify, even if your heart tries to forgive quickly, even if nostalgia tries to deceive you. Your soul remembers what it felt like to wait without an answer. It remembers what it felt like to ask for affection and receive coldness. It remembers what it felt like to be afraid to speak. It remembers what it felt like to feel alone beside someone. It remembers what it felt like to beg for clarity. It remembers what it felt like to cry in silence so no one would notice how much it hurt. Listen to your soul. Do not force it to return to a place where it had to break so you could wake up. Because there are awakenings that arrive with tears. There are lessons that arrive as goodbyes. There are moments that hurt so much that they force you to look at your life and say, I cannot continue like this. And even if, in that moment, it feels like a tragedy, sometimes that breaking is the beginning of your rescue. Sometimes life breaks an illusion to save you from a lie. Sometimes it takes someone away from you to return you to yourself. Sometimes it closes a door so you stop hurting yourself trying to open it. Sometimes it leaves you without answers so you can learn to believe actions. Sometimes it allows something to collapse because you never would have left a place that was slowly destroying you. And yes, it hurts. Of course it hurts. It hurts to stop waiting. It hurts to accept. It hurts to see clearly. It hurts to understand that a person who meant so much could not care for you the way you needed. It hurts to create distance when your heart is still looking back. It hurts not to answer. It hurts not to return. It hurts to choose yourself when a part of you wants to run back to what it knows. But there are pains that destroy and pains that free you. The pain of returning to the same thing destroys you slowly. The pain of leaving frees you little by little. The pain of accepting the truth wakes you up. The pain of letting go returns pieces of you. The pain of not going back can become the beginning of your peace. Not all pains are enemies. Some are bridges. Some hurt because you are leaving behind a skin you can no longer keep wearing. Some hurt because you are breaking a cycle. Some hurt because you are learning not to betray yourself. Some hurt because you are finally choosing what you deserve, not what you became used to enduring. And maybe at first you will feel guilty. Guilty for leaving. Guilty for not answering. Guilty for setting boundaries. Guilty for no longer being available. Guilty for choosing peace. Guilty for not giving another chance to someone who maybe now seems truly sorry. But remember this. Your guilt does not always mean you are doing something wrong. Sometimes guilt appears because you are doing something new. Because before you were used to sacrificing yourself. Because before you believed that loving meant enduring. Because before you confused compassion with allowing yourself to be hurt. Do not feel guilty for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for not returning. You are not bad for creating distance. You are not selfish for choosing your peace. You are not immature for not wanting to repeat the same story. You are not prideful for respecting yourself. You are not weak for accepting that something hurt you. You are not cold for closing a door that was breaking you. Sometimes closing a door is not a lack of love. It is self-love. It is maturity. It is awareness. It is understanding that you cannot keep giving your life to places that only give you pain in return. And maybe the person or place you want to return to was not completely bad. Maybe there were good things. Maybe there was intention in some moments. Maybe they also had wounds. Maybe they also suffered. Maybe they also loved you in their own way. But just because someone loved you in their own way does not mean they loved you well. Just because someone had good parts does not mean you should ignore the harm. Just because something was important does not mean it should remain. There are things that were real but not eternal. There are people who were important but not healthy. There are chapters that marked your life but do not belong in your future. And that does not invalidate what you felt. It does not make your love a lie. It does not make the beautiful memories disappear. It simply means that now you have the responsibility to care for the person you became after all of that. That version of you who cried, resisted, tried, forgave, waited, blamed themselves, broke, and still continued deserves something different. They deserve rest. They deserve tenderness. They deserve spaces where they do not have to defend their worth. They deserve relationships where they do not have to beg for care. They deserve peace without waiting for the next emotional blow. Do not return to places where your soul was broken, because this time you may not leave the same. Every return to what harmed you can take another part of you. At first, you lose your peace, then your confidence, then your joy, then your voice, then your dignity, then your ability to believe you deserve something better. And when you realize it, you are no longer loving. You are surviving. You are no longer choosing. You are clinging. You are no longer waiting for love. You are waiting not to feel so empty. Do not allow the fear of letting go to make you lose yourself completely. It is better to walk alone toward peace than accompanied toward your own destruction. It is better to go through a difficult night far from what breaks you than to sleep beside someone who makes you feel invisible. It is better to cry over a goodbye than to keep crying over a presence that does not care for you. It is better to miss someone from a distance than to keep giving yourself to a place where your soul cannot breathe. The loneliness after leaving may hurt, but it can also heal you. First, it may feel like a huge emptiness. It may feel as if you do not know what to do with the silence. You may look at your phone. You may wait for a sign. It may hurt not to have someone to tell certain things to. Everything may remind you of what you left. But little by little, if you do not go back, something begins to change. Silence stops feeling like punishment and becomes calm. Distance stops feeling like loss and begins to feel like protection. Absence stops being abandonment and becomes space to find yourself. Sadness stops being a prison and becomes a process. Peace begins to arrive slowly, like a small light entering through a window that had been closed for too long. And one day you wake up and breathe differently, not because nothing hurts anymore, but because you are no longer inside the place that was breaking you. Not because you forgot, but because you survived without returning. Not because you stopped loving all at once, but because you learned that your love also needs boundaries. Not because everything is solved, but because for the first time in a long time, you are no longer negotiating your peace. That day you understand that leaving was not losing. It was saving yourself. You saved yourself from repeating the story. You saved yourself from continuing to wait for changes that never came. You saved yourself from dimming your light for someone who did not know how to see it. You saved yourself from a version of yourself that no longer wanted to keep begging. You saved yourself from breaking again in the same place. And maybe no one will applaud that decision. Maybe no one will understand how much it cost you. Maybe from the outside it looks simple. Maybe some will say you exaggerated, that you should have forgiven, that you should have tried harder, that everyone makes mistakes. But you know what happened. You know how many times you tried. You know how many nights you cried. You know how many parts of yourself you gave away. You know how much it cost you to reach your limit. You do not need everyone to understand your decision for it to be valid. There are processes only you know. There are wounds only you felt. There are decisions only you can make because only you know how it felt to be there. Do not allow the opinion of people who did not live your pain to make you return to the place where you almost lost yourself. Your peace does not need approval. And when doubt comes, because it will, remember what made you leave. Not to feed resentment, but to protect your clarity. Remember the times you asked for understanding and received indifference. Remember the times you waited for change and received excuses. Remember the times you blamed yourself for feeling. Remember the times you minimized your pain so you would not lose someone. Remember the times your soul whispered, "I cannot do this anymore." Do not romanticize what you survived. Do not turn into love what left you without strength. Do not call destiny what drained you. Do not call intensity what was anxiety. Do not call passion what was instability. Do not call loyalty what was fear of leaving. Do not call patience what was self-abandonment. Look at the whole story, not only the first chapter, not only the beautiful days, not only the promises, not only what could have been. Look also at the tears. Look also at the absences. Look also at the times you had to pick up your pieces alone. Look also at how you felt when no one saw you. The truth is not only in what you miss, it is also in what it cost you. And if it cost you your peace, your self-esteem, your light, your voice, your joy, or your calm, then the price was too high. Do not go back. Do not return to that message you know will reopen the wound. Do not return to that conversation that always ends the same way. Do not return to that person who only appears when they feel they are losing you. Do not return to that place where your worth was questioned. Do not return to that relationship where loving meant enduring. Do not return to that version of yourself that accepted crumbs out of fear of being alone. Do not return, not because you hate, but because you have learned. You learned that your heart cannot be a home for someone who does not know how to stay with respect. You learned that love without care hurts. You learned that promises without actions exhaust you. You learned that forgiveness without boundaries exposes you. You learned that your peace is worth more than any story sustained only by hope. And learning also means acting differently, because if you choose the same thing again, the lesson will repeat. Maybe with the same person, maybe with another, maybe in another situation, but it will repeat until you understand that your life cannot keep revolving around people who do not know how to care for you. Break the cycle. Even if your voice trembles, even if your chest hurts, even if you miss them, even if you have weak days, even if not everyone understands, even if a part of you wants to go back. Break the cycle for yourself, for the person who cried in silence, for the person who asked for love and received doubts, for the person who stayed longer than they should have, for the person who blamed themselves for pain they did not deserve, for the person who is still learning to choose themselves. Sometimes healing is speaking to yourself with firmness and love at the same time, saying, I know it hurts, I know you miss them, I know a part of you wants to go back, but we cannot return there, not again, not to the same pain, not to the same abandonment, not to the same cycle, not to the place where we broke. That is also caring for yourself, because caring for yourself does not always feel comfortable. Sometimes caring for yourself means denying yourself something you want. Sometimes caring for yourself means not answering. Sometimes caring for yourself means blocking. Sometimes caring for yourself means leaving without giving more explanations. Sometimes caring for yourself means accepting that the other person may never understand your pain. Sometimes caring for yourself means no longer waiting for justice and starting to build peace. Peace does not always come with answers. Sometimes it comes with distance. Distance from the person who confused you. Distance from the person who made you doubt your worth. Distance from the person who asked for understanding but gave you no care. Distance from the person who promised a lot and sustained very little. Distance from the person who only knew how to love halfway. And that distance, even if it hurts at first, can become your medicine. Because far from what breaks you, you begin to hear yourself again. You begin to remember what you like. You begin to recover your routines. You begin to breathe without fear. You begin to look toward the future without the constant shadow of someone who was hurting you. You begin to understand that you did not need to go back. You needed to heal. And healing does not mean you no longer remember. Healing does not mean nothing matters anymore. Healing does not mean you will never feel nostalgia again. Healing means that even when you remember, you no longer betray yourself. Healing means you can miss someone without returning. Healing means you can love what was, but choose what is good for you. Healing means the past no longer has permission to drag you back into the same pain. Maybe one day you will look back without anger. Maybe you will be able to remember that place without wanting to return. Maybe you will be able to be grateful for the lesson without justifying the damage. Maybe you will be able to wish peace for someone and still keep the door closed. Maybe you will be able to speak about what happened without breaking. Maybe you will understand that all of it, though painful, woke you up to a fundamental truth. You also deserve care. And when you reach that point, you will understand that not going back was a form of love. Love for your peace. Love for your dignity. Love for your future. Love for your tired soul. Love for the person you are rebuilding. Because there is a life waiting for you far from the places where you broke. A life where you do not have to measure every word. A life where you do not have to beg for presence. A life where you do not confuse anxiety with love. A life where you can sleep without your heart feeling tight. A life where your smile does not depend on whether someone decides to answer. A life where your worth is not negotiated. A life where you can be yourself without fear that it will be too much. But to reach that life, you have to stop returning to the one that destroys you. You have to stop looking back as if your future were hidden in the place where you lost your peace. You have to stop believing that what is familiar is right just because you already know how it hurts. You have to stop opening doors your soul closed in order to survive. Trust the part of you that already knows. Even if your heart doubts, there is a part of you that knows. It knows which places harmed it. It knows which names still feel heavy. It knows which conversations leave it trembling. It knows which messages it should not answer. It knows which memories push it toward losing itself. It knows which doors it should not touch. Listen to it. Your soul did not break so you could repeat the same story. It broke so you would wake up, so you would understand, so you would set boundaries, so you would learn to choose yourself, so you would recognize that not everything you love must stay, so you would understand that the most important love, many times, is the one you give yourself when you decide not to return. So do not go back. Do not return to the place where your voice went silent. Do not return to the place where your sadness was ignored. Do not return to the place where your love was used as an advantage. Do not return to the place where you asked for care and received excuses. Do not return to the place where your soul had to break in order to be heard. Do not return to the place where they convinced you that you deserved little. Walk forward even if it hurts. Walk with fear but walk. Walk with tears but walk. Walk without having all the answers but walk. Walk even if you miss them. Walk even if sometimes you want to go back. Walk because every step away from what broke you is one step closer to yourself. And one day, without realizing it, you will no longer feel the same need to return. One day the name will hurt less. One day the memory will weigh less. One day the door will stop feeling like temptation. One day you will understand that you did not lose a home, because a home does not break the soul of the one who lives there. One day you will understand that what you left behind was not your destiny. It was your lesson. And when that day comes, you will take a deep breath and say, "It hurt me, but it woke me up. It broke me, but it did not destroy me. It lost me, but I found myself. I loved it, but I will not go back. Because my soul deserves a place where it can rest." Do not return to places where your soul was broken. Not because you are weak, but because you have already learned. Not because you cannot forgive, but because you also know how to protect yourself. Not because it does not hurt, but because you know returning would hurt more. Not because there is no love, but because you now understand that love without peace can also destroy. Not because you hate the past, but because you are finally choosing your future. And your future needs you to stop knocking on the doors that hurt you. It needs you to stop looking for life where something inside you died. It needs you to stop confusing returning with repair. It needs you to understand that some goodbyes are not losses. They are rescues. This time, rescue yourself. Choose not to return. Choose not to insist. Choose not to beg. Choose not to repeat. Choose not to abandon yourself. Choose not to betray the peace it cost you so much to recover. Because your soul does not need to return to the place where it was broken. It needs a place where it can heal.